We're going to talk about the progression of the decompressive stance for good spinal stability. And then we're going to do some different exercises we haven't done yet. And we're going to look at Phil's feet here. So, when we first start the stance from the ground up, the balls of the feet here, these are your metatarsals, you want to keep them on the ground. So make sure you're pressing like your big toe down and your pinky toe down, and then lift them up. So we're doing this. We're keeping the balls of the feet down, lifting the toes up. We're not rocking back. We're kind of, because it takes a lot of work just to keep those toes in. So for now, just think about your toes, just bringing those up like that. And it's going to be hard to try to keep that big toe in there. The next thing, put the big toe down, curling just the big toe down, keeping all the other toes up. Then the pinky toe, little toe down as well. Don't flatten the arches down, because you'll notice that bone here will lift up. That first metatarsal will lift off the ground. Then we flatten the outside of the foot. So we want to keep this arch on the outside maintained. Devil's in the details. So we're dorsiflexing just those toes. We're not rocking everything back here. We're keeping those balls down. Big toe down. Grab with that little one. Try to keep the other three in the air, which is the tricky part. Might not be able to do it.
With my hands, but not my
it's okay. Yeah. It's more in the attempt.
Okay.
You'll notice it's hard, and then be able to do it. So don't let it frustrate you that you can't do it, because I can't really do it that well. It's all about just getting it there. A lot of times your brain's talking to new muscles, has trouble doing it. So the more we do it, but can't push the strings down.
Doing this
Yeah, the more you can do your Spock.
Now I can do it with the
better.
feet.
So now that we got that, think about using that muscle we were just talking about, the iliacus muscle. We're squeezing in here, kind of pressing those hips back. And what you should notice is that now that as soon as we bring those toes up and we create this arch with our feet, outside arch is lifted up, and it should be impossible to straighten that knee all the way. Most of us have this tendency to lock our knees too much. So creating the arch like that, the steps we just went through,
I can still lock my knees.
prevents that. When we're grabbing, you should feel like they're not as lax. So they're maybe not locked, but they're a little looser than they are before, hopefully. If you're locked, maybe still maintain those steps. Get those pinky toes down.
Oh.
Anyways, squeezing the inner thigh a little bit and then pressing in. So you just went over the exercise, you were squeezing the donut, you're pressing in with the iliacus, pushing that hip into the socket. It's creating a good foundation. And we're exaggerating what we should be doing in normal life, but we should have a little bit of this when we're walking, getting those hips underneath us. And that lifts the spine upwards. So we're engaged here. It lifts the chest up. If you're ever looking in the mirror, you should see how my muscles kind of tighten up here. That little bit of change. So instead of arching to get that, I'm lifting that chest and engaging the front of the neck. So we're learning to use the hip flexor and the neck flexor at the same time. Feet, hip flexor, neck flexor. Then think about it like you're gripping a basketball with both hands. You got one in each hand, you're pulling those down, so you're pulling your shoulders down. So this is our first sustained hold exercise. This is really tough, just standing here, pulling down. We're pressing up against all those degenerated joints and rigid ligaments. So you could be generating a couple 100 pounds of pressure within your own body. So yeah, my face does get red and I start to sweat automatically because I'm doing a lot of work, even though I'm not moving, right? So think about all these little elements when we're running through these exercises. Now all these are kind of designed to do the same thing.
So are you? I felt something moving here when I.
In your low back?
Yeah.
You might feel that. Usually that's the area we bend too much. In the lumbar spine, we like to bend when we pick up objects. We'll round from that lumbar area. That's not good.
It's kind of on the side, right above your hip.
Here? Usually these muscles are really tight because we're back here all the time, which is, again, it's bending at that lumbar spine. And then we go to lift something up and we bend at that lumbar spine instead of actually motioning from our hip joints. which is we need to try to encourage a little bit more. That's why we're grabbing like the socket. We're pushing into the socket, if you want to think about it that way. Compressing from the sides, pulling in.
Buttocks tightening too?
We're not so much squeezing the butt. We're not just doing that because that pushes the hips forward. You can add that element last. A lot of people call that pelvic tilt. People like to go pelvic tilt right away. What we're trying to do is engage the spine first before we tilt. Because a lot of people are like, okay, I need to tuck and flatten. Well, what do you notice about my posture when I do that? I shrink. So I'm compressing all the joints. So if we do all our steps first, and then you want to add that butt squeeze at the end, you'll notice that I'll take my pelvis and it tucks it slightly. But it's much harder to do at that point. If you're really lengthened and then you try to tilt, that's a pretty tough exercise. So this is what we call anterior pelvic tilt. Tilting that way, a little more quad engagement. Whereas posterior pelvic tilt is playing more to the hamstrings. That's easier for me because my hamstrings are dominant. And this is a little harder, so my quads suck.
Right.
Can you feel that? Harder when it's lengthened. If you're not lengthened and you're just sloppy, you're like, whatever, I don't feel much. Because there's more bending at the spine, which is not what we want. We want to keep it lengthened, so we're not motioning at the spine, we're motioning at the hips. Subtle change in the pelvis. We don't want a lot. These joints aren't meant to move a lot. So just think about that. So these stances that I'm going to be going over are going to force the hips behind us because most of us, our hips are forward. Like you saw in your posture pictures, either the head was forward and the hips were falling with it and the shoulder was behind. Some of us are a little more lean back like that, but still the hips were forward. So the first one, we'll get those big toes together. Kind of the same stance though. We're going to pull the outside of the arch. If you can do that without raising the toes, still trying to keep.
Oh wait, are the balls of your foot down or not?
They're still down. Those little tossers are down. Keeping those down.
On the outer?
Here, outer side. You'll notice your inner thigh has to squeeze a little bit to help that out, and that's good. It's going to be grabbing more. And again, that's how push the hips in the socket. So when we get them into the socket, that's when we can use them. So for now, forget about the shoulders. Start with your hands on your hips. Sliding up, we're just going to set up this position right. Pulling, externally rotating those shoulders, keeping those thumbs tracing along our necks. Create a little ball like you're grabbing a balloon. Fingers pressing into each other. All the way up. This should be really good and stretching. Even this is holding it. Should be feeling a shake as everything's fighting to maintain that decompression. Bring the hands behind your head. Open up those shoulders. We're squeezing, keeping those hips locked. And then we're adding the hinge in. And we're going to hold this for 30 seconds. Getting as deep as you can. And breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It should be getting harder, not easier. 25. All right, relax, shake it out. Now, sometimes we're doing these exercises.
I have a problem here. So
We have problems everywhere. We're all about the numbers.
that hurts.
So sometimes, even with foundation training, we get caught up in, oh, I'm just going to get these numbers. I got to do reps. Sometimes when you hold the stance, it's a lot more work than doing a lot of numbers. We'll go over this one next. But could you feel that? As we engage those hips, and then we slowly wrap the arms up. What you notice, if we bring the arms right up, we extend. We lean back here. And that presses down. So it gives us the illusion that we're opening up the shoulders, but we're really not. That's what I was trying to show you here in the neck. When I lift up, you should see that little engagement here in the neck versus this, where you don't see that. So we're engaging those. Same idea here as we're pushing the hips in the socket. We're pushing the shoulders in the socket when we brought them up and brought them out. Because these turn in. So most of us are rounded here. So pulling these into the socket, they're going to work as they should. Otherwise, the spine or the neck has to help the shoulders. And that looks like this. So I'm lifting up, my head goes with it. If I keep my neck straight, something that becomes hard to do and I can't get up as high. So we cheat all the time. We create an imbalance. All this tension on the back of the skull. Weakness here. Lots of extra skin here because it's weak. Same thing, weak here. So your flexors, hip, neck, hip and neck. With the feet. Don't forget about the feet.
So are we still doing the toes together?
You relax it because I start in, because some of us there's 4 different quad muscles. Some of us are more weak inside, some of us are more weak on the outside. Sometimes we're imbalanced, so we're going to mix it up. We're going to go mid stance now, so about shoulder width apart. And we're going to do the classic founder exercise.
The what?
It's the classic founder exercise. Actually, no, we won't do that one. We'll go wide for that one. We'll go all the way wide. We'll save that one for later.
Do you want me to go over it?
Oh, you're fine. You have all the space you need.
I can go wherever you want to. So same thing, we're going to grab, try to pull up the outside, big toe down, then get that pinky down. And it's okay if you can't, or little toe. I mean, engaging, pulling those hips in, broadening the chest, grab those basketballs with your hands, really gripping them, creating like a claw. Pretty much you're opening up all the joints in your hand here. And then you're pushing those hips behind you, bringing the hands up at the same time. I'll show you from the side here in a second. Right there. And this is all about the progression, how we're getting there. I'm here, setting the stance. Pretty much I'm locking in the hip hinge, pulling the sockets, keeping everything in the sockets. You're forcing them to move while they're in the sockets, which they're just not used to doing. That's why they don't like this. Watch your head too. Make sure it's not bowing back. Really keep that engaged. And sink a little deeper. I'm going to count to 20. Get those fingers together. It's good to have that little bit of pressure. You're really caved in.
I am.
Yeah, so watch that. Watch my chest here. So we're getting here. As I lock the hips in, then I bring the chest up. And what I'm doing is I'm opening up the shoulders. I'm not doing this. I'm forcing the spine to be locked and lengthened. And now just isolating the shoulders. Drawing the shoulders down and externally rotated, opened up. Then as I hinge, I stick my butt out. That's really incorrect, but that's what it looks like. I'm keeping my chest broad, so I'm not doing that. Keeping my chest very broad, so it should be hard to get here. Because what your body wants to do is round a little bit to help you. Because then it becomes easy.
Is that better?
Better, but you look like you're not hinging at the hips now. Turn that way. Do it again. I'm watching you too, Holly. Don't think you're getting away with this.
I'm not giving you.
Start with the feet. Getting those down. Turning the hips in, squeezing the inner thigh. It's good to see a little shake.
Is that good?
Suck yeah, shaking is good. We want the shaking. Shaking is change. Suck your belly button into your spine more. There you go.
Okay.
Now lift the chest up. Same time, pull the shoulders down. The shoulders always want to go up. And what you did when you pulled your shoulders down is you actually bent at the spine. So try it again. Suck in the belly button.
I did what?
You did this. You had this right. You sucked in. And then as soon as I told you to pull your shoulders down, you did this.
Oh, I did. I thought I was going down.
Try it again. And you could see you lost the engagement here as soon as you did that.
Oh.
Because watch it me when I do that. So when here I'm engaged, but then it disengages. So you just rob Peter to pay Paul. This is tricky. Devil's in the details. Good. Pull your palms forward a little bit. Yeah. That looks
My
good.
chest is out.
So now,
I just have to.
as you bring your arms up,
Oh,
hinge back. This is what a hinge is. You're hinging just at those hip joints, not here. Motion starts here. And then raise your arms at the same time.
Okay. Chest is out. I'm gonna hinge
Mm-hmm.
like that.
That's pushing your pelvis forward. We want the
I don't know
opposite.
what, hinge.
Watch me again. Let's do it at an angle. So I'm here, engaged. So as I hinge, it's almost like I'm going to do a deadlift. I'm going down. The only thing we're doing differently is we're lifting the arms up. So I'm
Oh.
activating these muscles, coming in there.
Okay.
What this is no bending at the spine is happening. No bending, no warping. Spine stays lengthened. Feet sore.
My intro, Daniel adjusted it, so,
Now it's broken.
yes.
We only got one more after this.
But I'm feeling it in my ankle. That's not right. Right?
Hold tight and head's coming back.
Push what? Back?
Push your hips back. There you go. Hinging deep. Arms are coming up. As we hinge, claw together. There you go. Hold that for 30 seconds. Your shoulders are a little high, but that's okay. We have these wonderful muscles back here, which are probably very weak on you. These are called the rhomboids. We have a lot of rounding in our thoracic area. Those rhomboids need some more love. So the first one we did is actually a great rhomboid exercise compared to this one, because this one, it's easy for the pecs to take over because they're really good at turning in. So when we did this, and we brought them back, then you're squeezing the rhomboids. The problem is if we just do this, you'll see how my back arches. That's why we need to set up the hips right. Otherwise, most people, we don't even feel this. We're like, yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not as intense of an exercise as when we did all those other steps where we brought our toes together, really forced the hips and we lengthened. What we're doing is we're locking the lower half of our spine, and then we did the trace, we did the lengthening, and then we brought this in here. Just getting to that position is tough. And then as soon as I open, you notice I can't get my arms back as far, and I'm really shaking. And then we even hinged in there deeper to make that tough. And if you really struggle holding this, you can do it for just a second like that. Squeeze in deeper, try to hold it a little bit at the end, and breathe.
It's like, I'm not getting the hinge thing.
Hinge is tough.
Because I thought you said that you're not supposed to, when you were moving me, that I was bending my spine. So
Yeah, you don't want to bend the spine, you want to bend right here. This guy should be moving. Hip hinge. That's how we really suck in the belly button in. When we suck that belly button in, you'll feel these muscles in the lumbar spine tighten, they're locking down. Because when we have injured joints, there's weakness there. So to strengthen that joint material over time, it's like, what do you mean strengthen joint material? We can't tighten joint material, but we can tighten the muscles around it. And the more that joint, like a bone, is more resistance it gets, stronger it's going to get over time. So like people with osteoporosis, we don't tell them to lay down, we tell them to get moving. Don't go deadlift 300 pounds, but you want to add some weight to make the bone stronger. Same with joint material. The more resistance we get, now that doesn't mean compress it, it means use it. And then it'll get stronger. Same with discs. Discs are a type of joint material.
So when people have that degenerative disc,
Yes.
is there any strengthening or recovering that?
Yeah. And then the disc might always be there, like especially if it's shrunken. A lot of times we see that, or there's a bulge. The best thing we can do is strengthen those. There's little muscles around there. A lot of them are called the multifidus muscles. All these muscles that encase the spine that we don't see here, because there's lots of ligaments too. A lot of reasons that the disc blows out is because the ligaments in the front and the back aren't doing their job. They're overstretched. So we can strengthen those muscles, and you notice all these exercises we're lifting. So we're encouraging that lift, and we're almost retraining our bodies to do that on the day-to-day. That's the biggest thing, is getting yourself to do this when you're walking, when you're at the shopping mall, instead of here, well, maybe I'll just lift up a little bit, making it fun, making it part of your daily life, retraining yourself to move right, instead of, because little things have got us into trouble. It's the little things that have done this. So you're doing these exercises, big difference. And with these exercises, the reason I like them is because it makes your brain, even unconsciously, you're going to approach things a little differently. And that's the big difference there. And you eventually can, to answer your question, yes, you can repair disc tissue. Most people will tell you, no, you can't.
Right.
But all your cells replace. If we encourage good support and stability over time, you will create new good disc material, just as with the other joints in the spine, the facet joints, everything else. Nerves can heal too, they just take longer. Joints and ligaments take a long time. Muscle's pretty good at recovery. All right, let's do one more. Any questions on those two though?
Well, I think I was
Getting close to the
looking
hip?
at the hips, this part instead of my spine. I was
You'll,
trying to
yeah,
keep it.
you'll feel it because it's like this.
My legs were shaking
Yeah,
here.
you'll shake, and you feel almost like your pelvis is getting pressed together. When I think about it that way. So we're taking the pelvis and we're pressing in. Next one's a split stance. So this one's good for imbalances in the leg. And this one, same thing. We're kind of squeezing those inner thighs. The only foot that's really grabbing is the front now, but the back one stays on the toes. And then we're thinking about lengthening. So we're not doing yoga where we're bending back. We're doing the same thing. We're sucking that belly button into the spine. And what we just went over, those exercises, think about those. Tightening that iliopsoas, that hip flexor muscle, which causes the hip hinge to happen. So first the squeeze, then pressing back. And what we're going to do is almost like if we're going to go down to tie our shoe. We're keeping our spine straight, trying just to hinge at the hip. What we don't want is the knee to bend. We want to keep that knee there. And you go as far as you can. I can get about here before my spine bends. Then we're just going to try to open up this arm, really fighting. You should feel like you're going to fall over. That's how you know you're doing it right. And then it's getting up to the top, fighting to hold that position. Don't let that back leg turn out. That back leg's always going to want to turn out. So keep that straight. This is why you can do this by the benches. See how your knee is past your ankle? Make sure it doesn't go past the ankle. So I'll do the other side for you. So I start here, the knee's kind of forward. So as soon as I squeeze, it pulls back a little bit, and then I press in right here, using that deep hip flexor. Watch my chest. See how that change happens? As I get this in, I put my center of gravity over my hip, my chest broadens. And then we're sliding down, keeping that chest broad. You can do a lot of different exercises in this position, but I'm teaching you this one because maybe it'll encourage you to put your shoes on like this in the morning. Or, I mean, tie your shoes on like this in the morning. Or pick up something like this in the morning. And it's okay if you bend at your spine. Just start the motion at the hip. For the love.
Okay, but the forward foot is where the balance is, right?
You don't want the weight so much in the foot as it in the hip, but you'll feel that foot doing a ton of work. So we don't want a lot of weight on the back leg. So you are right, the forward foot does carry a little bit more of the weight. I look pretty good.
Okay.
So once you get down here, yeah, you'll feel like you want to fall over. Once you get down, we're taking the arm that's on the opposite side, and we're opening up the chest. So again, this is rhomboid, but it's only on one side now. So you feel a good pec stretch. And let your head follow your arm.
Oh.
So it goes together. Looking up towards the ceiling. We'll add a little neck stretch. That's a tough one.
It's like you almost want to hold on.
Yeah. This one's good for torsion in the spine being twisted.
And something like
You do what you got to do, because this one's going to take some practice. And it might be that you can't do the unwinding. You'll have to build up to that. Your stance is much better though. It's good. And for you, it's the rounding in your thoracic. That's the problem.
Here?
Yeah, your stance is really good. You're here, and then as soon as you start going down, you start getting a little bit of the rounding going on.
Okay.
So make sure you stay wide in that chest.
Okay.
Watch your head, don't let it do that. You'll notice that makes it easier when you do that.
Oh.
So I'm not saying tuck your chin. All I'm saying is this position, when I do that, I keep that the whole time. I push my hip back, my chest goes open, and I'm sucking in that belly button of the spine again. Then I'm going down. Good. And we can do a lot of things here. We can do the same exercise here. We can do a version of the founder here. This one I'm just doing it because it's a good way to find what side is weak. If you got one side that's weak, this one will really show you which it is. And you can do these against the wall, it helps. Yeah, you could crawl up against the wall. Like if you got a wall here, and get here and just kind of walk it.
Oh, that might be a good start.
Yeah. Your head's tilting back a little, Holly.
What?
Coming back a little bit. Sour pusses. Suck that belly button into the spine a little more. Driving that hip back at the same time.
Like that?
That looks good. You feel your chest pop when that belly button gets in. So it looks like this. It's that subtle change. You see how that neck kind of pops? That's what I want to see, is that neck flexor. And a lot of times you'll see the SCM bulge, and that's not that we're using it, it's because it's getting stretched. SCM runs from here, your collarbone, and it also pulls the head back. It works along with the upper traps. So a lot of times it just holds our head in this position, and then we kind of do this to level ourselves out. So when you're using a good chest, you'll see how that guy stretches. My chest is opening up, and I'm creating distance on that muscle. It's getting a stretch because I'm using more the, what we call the scalenes, neck flexors more. Neck, help you on your dates that you'll have in 10 years after you've recovered from this. I heard Phil here is single.
Weight, and that's part of why I have a lot of the skin here. I lost 100 pounds.
I don't really care what people's necks look like. This is about taking pressure off the nervous system.
So, you know, I just need a neck, you know.
Yeah, so that picture you got there, neckectomy. I need a thoracectomy. So that's the founder, the one you're looking at.
The founder?
That's the founder.
Okay, that's the one.
That's the one we did very wide, but you can do.
Very wide?
Yeah, we were here to do it.
Okay.
Just because I wanted to mix it up, because we did one here, and we did wide, and then we did split.
I know.
So that's a good variety.
More handouts.
That's what the course is for. The course is a big
Throws
handout.
a lot of stuff at you, and then you're like, I'm confused.
That's why I'm just doing 3 exercises tonight.
It's a lot.
Yeah, maybe we should have just
I'm
one
trying to
exercise.
remember in those things.
So this one, that's founder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You notice they all have the same element. They all have the same starting position, really. It's just we changed where our legs were.
Okay.
So we did this to work at something a little different. This is a little more inner thigh action, a little more inner quad action. Whereas this, a lot of us are stronger in the outer thigh. So this is usually easier for me, but as some people are different than me, so I like to throw it in there. Like for me, you know, doing a squat is much easier in a wider, like sumo squat stance.
Yeah.
So now I don't like to play to my strengths. I like to try to get more closer when I do my squats. And same thing, I don't get as deep as I used to, because when I got my weights, I just try to force that hip hinge. And you notice a good hip hinge, the knees don't go past the toes. Bad hip hinge, most of us we want to play to our hamstrings, where our heels will come up and our knees will go forward. So all the weight's in the knees. I didn't even like that. That hurt me without weight. And then we bend at the spine too.
Okay, but
I'm confused. I'm adding more stuff. How did you do this? See, this is how it happens. It just these examples come out of nowhere.
Easier as you go
More
along.
exercises just
It
come.
does
does,
get
okay.
easier as you go
Yeah.
along. I've
So-
been doing this for what, a year?
The hip hinge is extremely tricky to figure out.
so when you set it up, you do your feet first.
Mhm. Let's do that one more time. Yeah.
Okay.
So just normal stance,
Okay.
shoulder width apart. All we did was we kept the balls here.
Yeah.
These are our tarsals. We're keeping those down. So we're just really bringing the toes up themselves.
Okay.
And then getting the big toe down This is one to get rid of like plantar fasciitis, bunions, stuff like that. This will really help you. And again, you can try to do the same thing when you're walking, just grabbing like this.
Okay.
That's why you can add it into your daily life. And you'll notice that you just use your arches more. Because when they're in shoes, we don't need to. And around flat surfaces, we don't need to. So it's almost like you're doing it just to do it. Your body's like, oh, I don't need to. I'm in a shoe, and this surface is flat. I don't need to grab anything. Just pretend you're grabbing something. Just do it. That's what I do. So we're getting that. We're engaging the inner thigh, engaging here, pulling those hips in. And then we're just pulling the shoulders down as we lengthen our spine. Because as our hips get back behind us, our center of gravity changes, and we're able to lift the spine up. So one little simple exercise you can do here is just raise one foot, shift your weight, do the other one, raise those toes. Because you notice as you engage, you'll feel more engagement on one side over the other. Here. So let's just do one side at a time. See that? You feel the one. It's almost easier to one side at a time than it is to both at the same time.
Oh, yeah, then it's a balance.
And then try them both.
I can't do it.
And that's tough. You'll notice you'll be able to get one foot using the other. And you can do a lot of this stuff sitting too. So you can do that foot exercise sitting because it's going to be much easier. So if you're sitting there in your office chair, just...
I don't sit.
Good.
Okay, so the first one was
Bring the toes back. Big toe down, little toe down, create an arch.
okay.
Engagement here, sucking the belly button in. A lot of that happens naturally. As soon as you get your weight over your hips, just lift up better. You'll feel that the neck work more in the front. You might feel tension in the back of your skull because you're stretching a tight muscle. If we're doing just one side, just pull one arm down. Lifting one foot up, pulling one side. So neck flexor, hip flexor. Yeah. This guy. The reason we're pulling the shoulder down is it helps you engage. So if the shoulder's just there, I can't engage the neck as much because the dominances are there, the tight pecs there, the upper traps there. So I'm trying to take those out of the equation, put them in a stretch position so the weaker muscle can come in out into the sunlight, play along with everybody else as it should be.
So are my shoulders down?
You're getting there. Not going to happen once. Not going to happen right away. Looking good though.
Okay.
That's what we're going to see in the course. That's why we're taking the pictures. Is we're going to take them at the end. See what changes happened.
Okay. So now I'm supposed to do bend at the.
Let's keep you right there.
Okay.
I think that's a good exercise. Think about that hip hinge, but just think about it like this for now. You're here. You got your stance. Just pushing those hips in just a little bit more, deeper, almost than that you would naturally. So we're exaggerating. So like the hip almost comes back behind the shoulder just a little. And just think about driving upwards. Feel all those areas in your spine. Feel that point where you start shaking. And then do very deep breaths. Suck in a little bit more air. Then you feel like you can. And let it out. Almost like you're pumping up a big old balloon. You're pumping up your spine.
When you inhale air, that's really what's lifting your spine, right?
Not necessarily.
Trying to understand.
It helps expand the rib cage, but we're using the muscle to expand the rib cage, not so much the air. Because a lot of us, when we breathe in, we breathe from the chest first, and that arches us back. So that's part of that bad posture, is where we're breathing from here, doing this motion. So what I want you to do when you breathe is more from here. See the, so not extending back, expanding up and out, up and out. And that helps the hips. So yeah, breathing's big. So more from here.
I'm not even breathing right.
Yeah. We like to breathe from here. Because these muscles are stronger and we're used to it. if the shoulders are coming up when you're breathing, that's bad. The chest should be coming up. And the shoulders should be going down. But a lot of us confuse that with this. Look, I'm breathing correctly, Dr. Nate. And think about what we're doing to our poor lower back when we're doing that. Sorry, Phil. You're getting abused.
So if you suck in here,
Better.
did my shoulders go up?
No.
They didn't?
Mm-mm. But your head stayed down a little. So get that head up too. Create distance between your head and your shoulders. So as the spine lengthens, we get that in place. That's why I encourage pulling those shoulders down, driving the head up. So we're taking those tight levator scap muscles, we're taking those tight upper trap muscles, we're taking those tight SCM muscles, and we're stretching them by using those inhibited muscles more in the front that we just don't use. And you'll see that in a mirror. So
Yeah.
get naked later, have a good time by yourself, get a glass of wine, stand in front of the mirror, look at your body a little bit. I can't, it's already in the video. Dr. Heights is firing me tomorrow.
You know, all right, so breathing, I have to put into my equation because I wasn't doing that
Now
right
you
either.
are where I was, like, I don't know, when he first was here, over there.
Honestly, this is why
I've been doing nothing right my whole life, so.
this is why we're starting the course, because you're not the only one to be confused.
You're not
Okay.
the only one. I'm only laughing because I see how I was in the very beginning, and I'm like.
Am I asking the same questions?
You absolutely are.
So you guys are lucky. You know how long it took me to figure this stuff out on my own without somebody to teach it to me?
Really? Yeah.
It's like they don't teach you this in school. We get anatomy, we get the understanding, but a lot of like how our bodies are being disabled is just not taught. I had to put the pieces together for that. And
No, really, I
pain was the great motivator.
Any of this.
Pain is a good
I'm walking,
motivator.
Talking, moving, breathing, and whatever, and I'm doing none of it right. I'm not even sitting right.
Make it fun. You got to make it
I
fun.
have to tell you though, I had a sciatic problem, and I drove 30 minutes one way to work.
Ouch.
So I finally sat up so straight that it took the pressure off of where my sciatic was bothering me.
You can do it in the car.
And so I had what I thought was really good posture, but
Mhm.
whatever I did by just like really sitting up straight
Yeah.
and arching my back a lot, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it did take the pressure off.
Yeah.
I haven't had sciatic problems. Proud of myself for solving that. For me, it worked. I don't know if
Yeah, and it's hard to
everybody
tell,
has
like,
the same pressure points, you know, but
it's like I don't want to be like, yay, but like sometimes, we have a problem and we just warp another area.
Yeah,
That's what
and
our
we-
body does naturally.
I probably arched my back too much, but it took the pressure off of what was hurting, so.
Mm-hmm. And that can do it. And a lot of people are like, oh, that feels better when I press forward. And a lot of times what we see is people are here, and they're here, and they're here, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
degeneration. And then we can't go back because your body's switching. So we go from a hamstring dominant posture to a suddenly fully hip flexor posture with a rounded posture, and that happens pretty fast. So your body naturally will shift itself to get out of pain. That's why we see one shoulder higher than the other, but your body's twisting itself because it doesn't want pressure on the nerves. It likes to that's its job. So our job is to recognize that, kind of correct those one-sided imbalances, like getting your hips level, getting your shoulders level, and then your job is to try to correct a lot of this. Because I can push on that all day, but unless we strengthen those muscles that hold it there, it's not going to stay there.
Have I improved it all?